أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Inshallah, starting the majlis tonight, we want to refer to a particular quote stated by Sayyidatina wa Mawlatina Zainab in the courtroom of the oppressors and the tyrants, whereby she says, يا يزيد فكد كيدك واسعى سعيك فوالله لن تمحو ذكرنا ولا تميت وحينا. The courtroom of Yazid, she says, "Oh Yazid, do as you can, as much as you can, or whatever you will, for by Allah, He will never remove our remembrance, Ahlul Bayt." Taking this as a base for our speech tonight, inshaAllah, as we commemorate the sons of Sayyida Zainab and what they gave towards the religion of Islam on the 10th of Muharram, we want to look at Sayyida Zainab in a different light tonight that we're used to. Sayyida Zainab, as you know, biography-wise, we'll find that the much history that we have of her as a young daughter, many of us would look at Sayyida Zainab in a personality and begin to tell ourselves that she was great, a lady, because her grandfather on the first level was Rasulullah, that her grandmother was Khadija, that her mother is Fatima Zahra, and that's why she was great. Other people says no. Amir al-Mu'mineen is her father. Hassan and Hussein, as you know, which other besides Kulthum had two brothers that were imams as well as a father. So their greatness, then they come to lie and they say that the greatness of Sayyida Zainab was solely based off the fact that she was surrounded by purity, surrounded by infallible, surrounded by those that Islam was built upon. And that's where her greatness stems from. But when we look at a particular personality, because we understand, when we look at Sayyida Zainab's life, in order for us to learn from Sayyida Zainab, we need to understand what are the different ways that we can actually view any particular personality. So on the first level, understanding a personality, many of us will read biographies, would look into lifestyles, and we can become encyclopedias. And mashallah, in the communities we have, those people that you refer to and they'll know every single answer under the sun. Fiqh, masail, will know them like the back of their hands. You know, you tell them anything to do with history, they'll know it without a shadow of doubt. They'll know exactly when it happened, how it happened, who was involved, the names, everything. So when it comes to personalities, you'll tell them, tell me about Sayyida Zainab. They'll tell you she was born in this year, she was married, this is her husband, this is her children, this is when they were born, this is how old they were when they died, this is who killed them. They'll know everything from A to Z. But the first level of understanding a personality and trying to apply it is the fact that the first level of the first group of people will only know it, but it will never benefit them because they're encyclopedias. But none of that which they know, they've applied within their life. They'll know what Sayyida Zainab did on the 10th of Muharram. They'll understand how Sayyida Zainab lived her life prior towards Kerbala, how she used to teach, how she used to be morally, ethically within her household, how she was as a mother, how she was as a daughter. They'll know everything, but they don't apply one thing. That's the first level of knowledge of a personality or understanding a personality. And that's the one that we want to remove because that doesn't benefit us in any way. The second level, someone will look at the life of Sayyida Zainab and say to themselves, I see particular characteristics that I really enjoy in the life of Sayyida Zainab and how she lived it. So I'm not going to look at the things that are hard to apply within my life. You know, I'm not going to look at the fact that I'm going to wear my hijab, the same as Sayyida Zainab, because, you know, it doesn't help me now. I'm not ready for it. But I like the way that, for example, she used to love Abdullah. I want to keep that in my life. No. The second level is, you know, when you pick and choose, you're like, I like this about religion, I don't like this about religion. This one meets the criteria that I have. This one, I can place it into my lifestyle perfectly. The other one, it's challenging in my lifestyle. I'll have to change too much within my lifestyle. I don't know if I'm ready to be like Zainab in that particular perspective. That one also is not the one that we want to really take from. The third is when we come across the life of Sayyida Zainab, and I don't say this when we say it in a male audience, Some people may think to themselves, oh no, it doesn't apply to me because Sayyidah Zainab was a female. No, Sayyidah Zainab was for humanity, in her characters. And we'll understand this tonight, inshallah, from what she's achieved. But the third understanding of a personality is the one where we look at when you have that much love for a personality that you dissolve in their love. Example, we'll have the example of Rasulullah. Many people loved Rasulullah, didn't they? But there was only one person that dissolved in the love of Rasulullah. He dissolved in the love of Rasulullah, that he applied everything in his life exactly like Rasulullah taught. So much so that the Quran itself, when it comes, Rasulullah says to the Christians of Najran, he says, I'll bring forth our woman, you'll bring forth your woman. We'll bring forth our sons, you'll bring forth your sons. And then Rasulullah, what does he say? We bring forth ourselves, you bring forth yourselves. Amir al-Mu'mineen dissolved in the love of Rasulullah in such a level that he became the spitting image. So much so that the Quran says to Rasulullah, bring forth yourself. And that self of yours is Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. Likewise, we'll find on the 10th of Muharram, we have personalities such as Abu Fadl al-Abbas that dissolved in the love of Abu Abdullah. That in a few moments within Kerbala, when you read the history, that Imam al-Hussein himself says, بِنَفْسِيَ أَنْتِ. Do you know what that means? When an Imam says, بِنَفْسِيَ أَنْتِ, if you want to translate it, the easiest translation says, may I be a sacrifice for you. Strange to hear, isn't it? That Imam would say such a thing. But when you look at who it's for, then you begin to analyze. It's for Abu Fadl al-Abbas that he says it. It's a person that dissolved in the love of Abu Abdullah. Likewise in Kerbala, we had another personality by the name of Sayyidah Zainab, that we understand dissolved in the love of Fatima al-Zahra. And that's why when we understand, when we look at the biography of Sayyidah Zainab, that any time came where she wanted to showcase herself, what did we say in a few nights? That every time when she came out, she would wear the abba of her mother, Fatima. So we understand all of these aspects when looking into particular personalities and how we need to look to gain from it. It's not the fact that I can just pick and choose. Nor do I have to just learn a biography and read a book about Sayyidah Zainab. It's about taking everything from her life and trying to apply it in the best manner that I can. That's what we need to understand. Another aspect about Sayyidah Zainab's life that we often hear, but we never really pay attention to, is many times we'd come, and when we're talking about her character, people call her a ma'soom. She was ma'soom. But then the question arises, hold on, we thought we only had 14 infallibles. How can Sayyidah Zainab be a ma'soom as well? And that will be the contingency of our argument today, whereby we want to look at the aspect of the infallibility of Sayyidah Zainab. And we're going to look at it in a few different points that we're going to highlight in order for us to really try to gain from the knowledge and the character of Sayyidah Zainab and apply it to our lives. The first question we want to ask ourselves is, what does isma mean? As we hear it many times, is there just one isma, or is there another type of isma that we need to look towards? Secondly, what are the different opinions that surround the existence of another isma? As in, what's the for arguments, what's the against arguments? The third, what are the characteristics of this particular isma that we want to bring forward? And can anyone attain this isma? Or do you need to have particular characteristics prior in order for you to go towards that particular isma? And on the final note, we want to look at the characteristics of Sayyidah Zainab that she was given, and highlights to us what she's capable of with this level of isma. So inshallah we can bless the majlis tonight and start it as we want to recite salawat, but we also want to move as close forward as we can so we can allow the others to come forward. So let's inshallah bless the majlis with alal salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah. Isma, linguistically, when a person says asamtu nafsi, when we say asamtu nafsi, you can look at three different ways. Either you make a stop to something, or there's a veil or a barrier. Example, if I want to say that I all of a sudden want to put a stop or a veil or a barrier between me and drinking chai, for example, that's never going to happen. But if I wanted to, if I want to say, I want to put a barrier between me and tea. From now on, no more tea for me. I can come forward and say, asamtu nafsi min al chai, for example. The understanding there is now a barrier between me and something. Veil between me and something. Someone can come forward and say, asamtu nafsi min akli al-haram. I have had this understanding that I put a barrier or a veil or a stop from me and eating that which is haram. Asamtu nafsi an akli al-haram. Someone can come forward and say, asamtu nafsi min al, listen to music, for example. So I said, I veiled myself, put a stop between me and listening to music. So the understanding there, linguistically, that aspect of isma means that there's now a veil between something or someone and that particular action or something else. It could be a person, it can be an action. The understanding is there's now a veil, a stop, a segregation. So how do we apply this understanding of a linguistic sense to its input within our lives? So when we look at it, people say, well, hold on. I've always been taught that there's only one type of isma and that there's only 14 ma'sumin that we have. How can we, for example, have a lady that's buried within Qom by the name of Fatima al-Ma'suma? We thought there's only 14. Why do sometimes on the manabir we hear a person saying that Sayyida Zainab had isma? Is there something more that we need to be alluded to? So the people come forward and say, yes, there's something called a major isma and there's something called a minor isma. So what's the difference? So they say that the major isma only applies to the 14 infallibles because that barrier, that guard, that protection is divinely appointed. And some people don't say it's isma or infallibility. They come forward and say it's a divine guard from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes instead of saying infallible, they'll say the divinely guarded 14. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is guarding them from all that which is sinful, haram, deviating, what have you. Why? Because they are the protectors of the message. So on the one side, we have this understanding there's only 14 infallibles. On the other side, we now understand that there's another type of infallibility. Of the people come forward and say this is called al-ismat al-sughra, the minor infallibility. Of the people that come and call it al-isma al-iktisabiyya, self-attained infallibility. Some people come forward and say this is the isma what do they call it? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The one where you apply yourself. Al-iltizamiyya, meaning you hold steadfast to this particular type of isma. Why? Because by being steadfast, by protecting yourself on a constant basis, you are attaining this. So the for and against, people come forward and says, no, there's only one type of isma. And these things that you bring forward is all new. As in we've never heard of it before. Where are you coming with this particular type of infallibility? The other people say, no. Just because the names are not familiar to you doesn't mean that rank doesn't exist. Doesn't mean the capability that you can become a self-attained infallible does not exist. So all of a sudden, then what's the criteria? If we've understood, it's a lot of echo. It's a lot of echo. Sallu ala Muhammad. There's a lot of echo. Yeah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. So this self-attained infallibility, what's the characteristics behind it? What do we need to do in order for us to be in that group where we consider to ourselves that yes, this is the conditions to have a self-attained infallibility? And is it available for everyone? So they say there is conditions. The first being that you have this concept of adala, meaning that you do that which is wajib and you refrain from that which is haram. First level. Very simple when we say it out loud, yeah? What we discussed yesterday, taqwa, Imam puts it into two sentences. Don't be missing in the places where Allah wants you, and make sure the places that He forbade, you're not there. Basic understanding, taqwa. A person that has taqwa has the capability to have this aspect of self-attained infallibility. So hold on. If you're telling me that if my daily life, I refrain from that which is sinful, that which is haram, and do my wajibat, I have this particular level of self-attained infallibility? And the answer is yes. Because it's a lot harder than you think. Simply put, that stay away from haram and do that which is wajib. Because when we look at infallibility, now we're moving away from the so we're moving away from the divinely guarded infallibility. Only 14. Now we're talking about everyone else. The self-attained infallibility. Many of us will look at this, looking at the conditions that do the wajibat, stay away from that which is haram, and I've attained it. No. Because we're looking at infallibility now, the self-attained infallibility, as a black and white, where it's not. And we're looking at it as if, let's say, for example, a person is lying. He can't be like 20% lying, can he? You can't be 20%. You're either lying or you're not lying. You're telling the truth. You know, when you ask the children, did you hit your brother? It's usually a yes or no answer. And they'll come like, I hit him, but just a little bit, Did you pull your sister's hair? Like, I didn't hit. Just a little bit, but there's no percentage there. Infallibility isn't, when we enter this self-attained infallibility, isn't yes or no. That's you're infallible all of a sudden now, or you're not infallible. No. It's more like stages. So you can refrain from haram and do your wajibat. Doesn't mean you're at the height of that self-attained infallibility. No. If I tell you now, if I get everyone to wear white shirts, you'll look across the room and you'll see there's different shades. Some people have very, very white shirts. You just took it out of the supermarket. Other people, it might be cloudy. Different shades of white if everyone was to wear white. The understanding there is your connection between you and Allah showcases the extent of your infallibility. The self-attained one we're talking about. That you can't say, for example, the person such as, let's say, a marja, is the same as Sayyidah Zainab. As high as that person is, that we understand that he is practicing this level of self-attained infallibility. Otherwise, you wouldn't follow him as a marja. He has those qualities, staying away from haram and doing that which is wajibat. But then there's levels. Amongst those levels, as an example, a person may be doing the wajibat, refraining from muharramat, but he still does, for example, things that are shirk or makruhat. Some people will only have the thought of a makruh, something that's disliked. Will have the thought. Other people, the thought of even doing a makruh doesn't cross their mind. Doesn't even cross their mind. See the companions of Imam Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman, there's a tradition that says they do not even, in a blink of an eye, they don't even think about displeasing Allah. Blink of an eye. See how high that rank is. Because one slip, because the characteristic is that you attain that level, but forever. Meaning once you've made yourself that I want to attain this level of self-attained level of infallibility, I don't just do it, like half a day and then tomorrow I'm going to sin and I'm going to come back to becoming self-attained infallible. It's not like that. Otherwise, everyone technically is infallible when they sleep. True? Everyone's infallible when they sleep. They're not committing any sin. No, you need to make sure that you have those characteristics and you maintain it throughout your life. One slip up, because many people gained high positions. One slip up, and you'll find them in a place where they never thought they'd be. Example, we have a person, it's always mentioned, by the name of Barsisat. Many of us may have heard this name, many of us may not have come across this person. This person, in the traditions, was a person which was mustajab al-da'wah. Meaning when he was prayed towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he attained such a high rank in the eyes of Allah that every time he'd make a dua, Allah would grant him his wish. So they said, there's a king, had a daughter that was sick. Took him everywhere, no one could cure her. So they told him, take it to Barsisat. He is mustajab al-da'wah. So they came to him, they brought the king's daughter, the princess, says, can you please pray for her? He says, it's not my job or anything like that, As in, I'm a abid, I'm a worshipper. So he said, no, we're going to leave her with you, just make dua, we're going to come back and pick her up. So he's making dua, Allah granted his wish, she was cured. But she stayed there while the brothers come back. Then the shaitan comes. Many of us, when we connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shaitan cannot handle that. It can be in anything, small or big. Shaitan's going to be there, making sure that you do not achieve what you want. Whispers, ideas, thoughts in your mind, in order for you to be led astray. So he comes towards Barsisat. Remember, this is not an ordinary person. This is a person which is mustajab al-da'wah. Imagine how much he's elevated in the eyes of Allah, that Allah grants him the rank of mustajab al-da'wah. So shaitan comes to him and is like, she's a beautiful lady, princess. You're, a scholar. Go towards her. No one's going to suspect you. You're a scholar. Shaitan, until Barsisat slips. So all of a sudden now you've got a princess that performed that which is haram with this Barsisat. Shaitan comes again. Because when you slip, Shaitan's like, that's it, I got him. I got her. You're at the mercy of Shaitan at that level. He comes and he's like to him, hold on, you've just committed an act with this lady. She's going to go tell the king. You're gone. You have to kill her. That's the only way that the king won't find out. Kills her. Buries her. The brothers come back. Where's my sister? I don't know. I prayed, she was cured, and she left. So they go out looking nothing. Shaitan comes to them. Ta'al Baba, go behind. In the garden, there's a grave there. Dig it up, there's your sister. So indeed they go, they find it, dig it up, the sister's there. So they knew this person is the only person that could have killed her. They take him to the place where he's about to be hung. This person's his entire life was worship towards Allah. Shaitan comes to him and he says to him, slip, he slipped. At the last moments, he's about to be hung. A mustajab al-da'wah, Shaitan comes to him again. Doesn't leave us. Till the last moments, he'll be there trying to divert us away from the path of Allah. Shaitan comes to him and says, Barsisat, he says, get away from me. You're the person and you're the reason why I'm here. He says, I'm very capable. He says, just bow to me and I'll save you from what you're in. He says, you're the reason why I'm here. He says, just bow. What have you got to lose? You're in this position, there's no saving you. I'm the only one that can save you. She says, I can't, my head's hung. How can I bow? He says, just with your eyes. Bow with your eyes. So he says he bows with his eyes and they hang him. Shaitan. The understanding there is that he got him at the last level. That even in that level, we understand that if Barsisat was to return back towards Allah, could have been a chance for him. But that person, all that worship between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may be questionable. But how much faith did he actually have in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he was allowed to or capable to be led astray? So the understanding we need to take from this concept of infallibility, which is self-attained, is that we may enter into the realm of allowing ourselves to be guarded from that which is sinful in our daily lives. Guarded from that thing which displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But our true understanding is we need to elevate in those levels. If we want to attain the heights, when we have traditions telling us, such as if a person practices this aspect of taqwa for 40 days consecutively and 40 nights, that Allah places within him a nur in his heart. That nur will transcend and manifest on the person's tongue as wisdom. One of the first things, after 40 days, you begin to receive these blessings by entering this realm. We have people that reach the height of these self-attained infallibility. Of these people that attained the highest of levels was Sayyidah Zainab, was Ali al-Akbar, was Aba Fadl al-Abbas, was Fatima al-Ma'suma, amongst many others. They are the people that reach that self-attained infallibility level. What can we look from the characteristics of Sayyidah Zainab when she's attained such a level? An aim to reach such a level as Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. The first of the characteristics that she showcases to us is the characteristic of knowledge. Knowledge, Sayyidah Zainab will find when we read the khutbah of Fatima al-Zahra. When we read the khutbah of Fatima al-Zahra, we'll begin to see it's pages long, very difficult to learn and memorize. Do you know one of the narrators of that particular tradition was a 4-year-old Zainab? Heard it when? Once. Once she heard it from her mother, memorized, and was one of the people that gives it to us. She's the person that the chain of narrations from. A 4-year-old Zainab, look at the knowledge of Sayyidah Zainab. That's why we find Imam Zain al-Abidin in the path towards Kufa. He tells his auntie, oh my auntie, أنت عالمة غير معلمة فهمة غير مفهمة. You are knowledgeable without being formally taught knowledge. Then where did this knowledge come from? What did we say in the story of Musa and Khidr? وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. Self-attained, and then there's knowledge that Allah can inspire you, gift you, teach you, known as ilm ladunni. That Sayyidah Zainab was alima ghayr mu'allama. Knowledge aspect of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. First level. We're going to move on, and there's some lenses that we're going to look at Sayyidah Zainab that you're going to think to yourself, I've never heard that in my life. Second, we know that she was mustajab al-da'wah, where between Kerbala towards Sham, there was a particular palace that was there and had a queen that was inside it. That queen, as the caravan of the Sabaya were moving, she takes, her name was Hajjam, she takes a rock and throws it on the head of Abu Abdullah. When she does that, Sayyidah Zainab raises her hands to complain about that lady. Before her hands are put down, Sayyidah Zainab, you'll find that castle, the tradition says, was ignited from a fire from within. By the time the caravan passed, that whole castle was alight and made to rubble. Number two, mustajab al-da'wah. Number one was knowledge. What other characteristics did Sayyidah Zainab have? This is one I want you to pay attention to. Sheikh Ma'maqani, remember the name, suggests this. He says, for a person that has read the biography of Sayyidah Zainab, that has understood what has occurred within Kerbala, understood the sickness of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, understood the mission and its sensitivity and the need for Sayyidah Zainab to be the person in the forefront of defending the religion. He goes, it's unjust not to think that the Imam al-Hussein, gave Sayyidah Zainab a portion of the weight of Imamat. Let that sink in. He says, I have no doubt that at the time of the sickness of Imam al-Sajjad, that Imam al-Hussein gave Sayyidah Zainab a portion of the weight of Imamat. If ever a time you thought Sayyidah Zainab was a great lady, this should really make you think how great she actually was. The assistance in Imamat. Had it not been for Sayyidah Zainab and her stance, protecting the Imam of her time, they would have struck Sajjad. But she puts her body on the line. She said, you want to strike him, you strike me first. And she teaches everyone what occurred in Kerbala. So the weight of Imam, another level. Worship. Many of us will think we attain a high level, we don't need to worship as much. Sayyidah Zainab teaches us that such a high level she attained, still she never left her worship. How do we know this? That even with calamity, many of us at these times will find that something happens within our life. It could be a death, it could be a bad business transaction, it could be bad health, that Allah strips the health away from us, from our loved ones. Ultimately, whatever happens for calamity within our life, we find ourselves leaving Allah, going the other way, saying, why has God forsaken me? Why me, oh Allah? What kind of religion gives their people or pupils calamity? And they leave the religion, leave worshipping, leave Allah. Sayyidah Zainab, what does she say? Imam Zayn al-Abidin comes to her on the 11th. You know what he says? Doesn't surprise him. He doesn't say, oh Amma, why did you do this? He says, Ya Amma, why did you pray whilst sitting? Doesn't say, why didn't you pray? Salatul Layl, by the way, not normal salat, mustahab. Salatul Layl she was doing whilst sitting. Imam Sajjad says, I know you're going to pray with all the calamities that have befell you. But oh my auntie, why sitting? She would say, oh Sajjad, it's because of the weight of the calamity that I've just witnessed. I have no strength to stand. Worship. Vision. A person connects with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah bestows upon them wisdom, also vision. Where was the vision of Sayyidah Zainab? Many places. I'm going to mention two tonight. First is the one that we mentioned at the start of the lecture. يا يزيد فكد كيدك واسعى سعيك فوالله لا تمحو ذكرنا ولا تميت وحينا. An empowering statement in the court of the tyrants. After your family has just been killed on the plains of Kerbala and the women are taken captives. In the courtroom of the tyrant of the time. Being taken in as a captive. But yet, the strength that she showed. They would say, is this Zainab or is this Ali when she spoke? The way and eloquence and vision when she spoke. She would tell Yazid, you think that you have us? You think you can wipe away our memory? Wipe away the revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by this calamity that you caused? She says, by Allah, you will never be able to. Another tradition says, Imam al-Sajjad was saddened after Kerbala. Look at this tradition. She finds Imam al-Sajjad saddened. She comes to him. Look at the vision of Sayyidah Zainab. She says, ما لي أراك تجود بنفسك يا بقية أهلي. Why do I see you hurting yourself in such a manner of sadness and mourning, O that which remains of my family? Saying this to who? Imam Sajjad. After Kerbala. You know what she says then? فَوَاللَّهِ. She does a qasam. By the way, as a side note, you only find in the most important and dire of situations do the Ahlul Bayt do a qasam. She says, فَوَاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ عَهْدٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِجَدِّكَ وَأَبِيكَ. She says, by Allah, this, what occurred, is a covenant between Allah, your grandfather, and your father. وَسَيُنصَبُ عَلَمٌ فِي الطَّفِّ. There will be a flag that will be put in Taf, which is Kerbala. عَلَى كُرُورِ الْأَيَّامِ وَاللَّيَالِ. That will last days and nights. وَلَيَجْتَمِعَنَّ أَئِمَّةَ الْكُفْرِ عَلَى مَحْيِهِ وَتَطْمِيسِهِ. That the tyrants and the evildoers of the time all will come together in order for them to lower that flag of Aba Abdullah. فَلَا يَزْدَادْ إِلَّا عُلُوًّا. It will never go down. On the contrary, every time they come to bring down that flag of Aba Abdullah, the only place it will go is elevate and elevate and elevate.
لبيك يا حسين 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 لبيك يا محمد وآل محمد صلوات
Allah. Vision. You tell me a lady that was taken captives has that vision of seeing that flag of Aba Abdullah, it is what it is today. She saw through time that it echoed that vision of hers. So now we'll see what Sayyidah Zainab said all those years ago to Imam Sajjad. What's another character of Sayyidah Zainab? And this is arguably one of the most tragic and the most empowering. If you ask me, what's the hardest, the most difficult situation for Sayyidah Zainab, but the most powerful? Many of us will come forward and say that it's when she said, I see nothing but beauty in the face of tyranny. Other people will come forward and say, it's when Sayyidah Zainab gave her 2 sons to Aba Abdullah. But there's a situation that resonates for me, that showcases the power, the position, and the sacrifice of Sayyidah Zainab. Because we know on the plains of Kerbala, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, at every moment, whenever a person would fall, whenever he would sacrifice someone for Allah, Aba Abdullah says towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Oh Allah, take until you are pleased. Abdullah al-Radhiya, he would take the blood that was gushing, throw it. خُذْ حَتَّى تَرْضَى. Take it until you are pleased, O Allah. But I ask you, do you know who came towards Aba Abdullah and offered him as a sacrifice? I want you to imagine the heart of a sister that every morning you wake up looking at the bright face of Aba Abdullah. And every night before you sleep, you look at the face of Aba Abdullah. That you go down on the night of the 10th, between the bodies that you don't know who they belong to. Beheaded, limbs chopped. You would walk past your sons, walk past your nephews, walk past your Abbas, and arrive at a body that you don't recognize because it's been trampled on by the hooves. In that darkness of the night, you would try to gather what was left from the body of Aba Abdullah. Put your hand under it and raise it and say to Allah, Oh Allah, accept this sacrifice from us. Look at the position of Sayyidah Zainab and what she needed to do in Kerbala. That the mission was based, its survival, on this great lady. Another of the characteristics of this great lady that we earned is that she was a mother above all else. The heart of a mother, Imam Sajjad says, he says a mother carried her children in a place where no one carries anyone. That she feeds her child from the fruit of her heart, that which no one feeds anyone. That this mother would be happy to stay in the sun as long as her children are in the shade. This mother would be happy to be cold as long as her children are warm. She would be happy that she would be starving until her children have eaten. To go thirsty and be happy that her children's thirst is quenched. Such is the love of a mother. That she's happy to be in pain as long as she does not see the pain on her children. How painful was it, oh brothers, oh sisters, that Sayyidah Zainab would come into the tent and gaze upon Awn and Muhammad. Those children that she brings up, that she tells them, oh Awn, oh Muhammad, my happiness is seeing you sacrifice yourself towards Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. That's my happiness, that everyone has sacrificed themselves. I want to also be in a state of mourning for my children. I found the mothers in Kerbala are mourning their children. That Fatima al-Zahra will mourn her child by the end of the night. I want to be there to sacrifice you before anything. So you'd find Sayyidah Zainab would bring forward Awn and Muhammad towards Abu Abdullah. Imagine being an uncle towards these young beauties, moons of Bani Hashim, that they come towards you. The traditions say that the clothes would not even fit on these two youngsters, that they had to tie a turban on their heads in order for the helmet to fit on these youngsters. And you'll find Abu Abdullah al-Hussein would look at these two young boys going out towards the battlefield. And you know what's interesting enough, that Awn and Muhammad, you know who trained them? Their uncle Abbas would be the one that trained them. So you'll find Muhammad would go towards the battlefield and he'd look back towards his mother. He'd look back towards Sayyid al-Shuhada. He'd look back towards the person that trained him, his uncle Abbas. As he's striking the enemy, he would begin to kill a few horse riders. He'd begin to kill a few men. As soon as he would strike someone, he'd look towards Abu Fadl al-Abbas as if to say, oh my uncle Abbas, are you proud of the way that I'm striking the enemy? Are you proud of the way that I'm defending Abu Abdullah? Are you proud of the way that I'm using that which you have taught me? He'd strike another and he'd look at Abu Fadl al-Abbas, strike another, look towards Abu Fadl al-Abbas, and then a person would come. Umar ibn Sa'd would say, these are the sons and the grandsons of a great warrior. These are the sons of Ja'far al-Tayyar. Their uncle is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Make sure that you hurt the heart of their uncle Imam al-Hussein by striking them. Don't face them one-on-one. Surround them from all sides. They would surround Awn and Muhammad. They would split the boys. All of a sudden, they're separated, and you'll begin to see the people striking Awn. When they would strike Awn, Awn would fall. Who would see this? His brother. Imagine seeing your brother fall from a strike. As he's falling, he looks towards Abu Abdullah. The tradition says all of the companions, most of them would look towards Abu Abdullah as they're falling, and they would scream out, Assalamu alayka ya Abu Abdullah. Awn would do the same. Muhammad would see this. They would say, as soon as Awn would fall, Muhammad comes to him. As it comes towards him, you'll find two people at the same time would strike Muhammad on the head. He did not even have a chance to look towards Abu Abdullah. From that strike on his head, he went straight and died. You'll find at that very moment, Imam al-Hussein and Abu Fadl al-Abbas would rush toward the aid of the two youngsters. They would carry them towards the tent. When they would carry them, you can imagine placing them in the tent. All of a sudden, their mother Zainab would come. When Zainab would come, you'll find that Sayyidah Zainab doesn't shed a tear, lest Imam al-Hussein is hurt by him seeing Sayyidah Zainab in such a moment. You'll find Sayyidah Zainab, she would put one hand on the chest of Aoun, the other hand on the chest of Muhammad, and she would go into prostration. She would not shed a tear for them in Kerbala, lest it would hurt Sayyid al-Shuhada, Abu Abdullah. Do you know when she shed a tear? When she returned back towards Medina, the calamities that befell Sayyidah Zainab, that her husband was there speaking to Imam al-Sajjad. When Sayyidah Zainab would come towards Imam al-Sajjad, Sayyidah Zainab's husband was there. Imam al-Sajjad, you'll find the conversation would be that Sayyidah Zainab's husband would tell Imam al-Sajjad, who is this outsider that's coming towards us? That he would not recognize Sayyidah Zainab from how much Kerbala changed her. Sayyidah Zainab would go towards the house. She would go towards the rooms of Aoun and Muhammad. The traditions would say when she'd enter the rooms, you can imagine that their beds were empty. The beds where Aoun and Muhammad used to lie. The beds in the home in which she would enter. She would hear their voices, smell them, see them with her eyes. All of a sudden, the house is empty from Aoun and Muhammad. The tradition would say that's when Sayyidah Zainab would cry for Aoun and Muhammad. Inshallah, we can keep our hearts in Kerbala and all stand up, inshallah, for the honor of the taboot that's going to come around us.